Here's something I hear from patients every single week in my practice. Dr. Kim, I'm eating less than I did in my 40s, I'm walking every morning, I'm trying, so why is my belly getting bigger? And honestly, that question used to frustrate even me, because the conventional answer, eat less and move more, completely fails to explain what's actually happening inside your body after 60. If you're over 60 and you're watching belly fat accumulate no matter what you do, I need you to understand something important right now. This is not a failure of willpower. This is biology. After 60, your hormones shift, your cortisol rises, your insulin response weakens, and your body, through a completely natural but frustrating process, begins to preferentially store fat in one place, deep in your abdomen. The medical term for that fat is visceral fat, and it is not the same as the fat you can pinch on your sides. Today, I'm going to give you something practical. I've identified 8 specific snacks that, based on peer-reviewed research, actively work against visceral fat accumulation in adults over 60. These aren't exotic superfoods. Most of them are already sitting in your grocery store, and when you eat them correctly, at the right time, in the right combination, they become powerful tools against that deep belly fat. Stay with me through all 8, because number 4 is going to surprise you, and in my experience, it's the one most people over 60 have completely overlooked. Let's get into it. Before we talk about snacks, I want to give you 60 seconds of science, because understanding why this fat behaves the way it does will make everything else make sense. There are 2 types of fat in your abdomen. The first is subcutaneous fat, the soft layer just under your skin. You can pinch it. It's annoying, but it's relatively harmless. The second is visceral fat, the fat that sits inside your abdominal cavity, wrapping around your liver, your pancreas, your intestines. You cannot see it, you cannot pinch it, and it is metabolically active, meaning it's not just sitting there, it's releasing inflammatory chemicals, disrupting your hormones, and raising your risk of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and cognitive decline. Now here's what changes at 60. Cortisol, your body's primary stress hormone, tends to rise as we age. And cortisol has a very specific side effect. It signals your body to store fat, especially visceral fat. At the same time, estrogen drops in women and testosterone drops in men. Both of those hormones help regulate where fat is stored. When they decline, your body defaults to the abdomen. And then there's insulin resistance. After 60, most of us have some degree of it. Our cells don't respond to insulin as efficiently as they used to, which means blood sugar spikes higher after meals, stays elevated longer, and more of that sugar gets converted into, you guessed it, visceral fat. Here's the critical point. The wrong snack makes all 3 of these problems worse. A high-sugar, low-fiber snack in the mid-afternoon doesn't just add calories. It triggers an insulin spike, elevates cortisol, and directly feeds visceral fat storage. The right snack does the opposite. It blunts the insulin response, helps regulate cortisol, and gives your body the raw materials it needs to burn fat instead of storing it. That's exactly what these 8 snacks are designed to do. Let's start with one you may already have in your refrigerator. Plain Greek yogurt, specifically paired with walnuts. Now, you might be thinking, I already eat yogurt. But here's the thing. Most of the yogurt Americans eat is flavored, sweetened, and loaded with added sugar. That kind of yogurt is actually working against you. I'll come back to that in a moment. What I'm talking about is plain, full-fat or 2% Greek yogurt, and here's why it's powerful for visceral fat after 60. First, Greek yogurt is exceptionally high in protein. A single cup delivers 17 to 20 grams. And protein is your best ally against visceral fat, not because it burns fat directly, but because high-protein snacks dramatically lower cortisol response. A 2019 study published in the journal Nutrients found that protein-rich snacks reduced cortisol levels in older adults by a measurable margin compared to carbohydrate-based snacks. Less cortisol means less visceral fat signaling. Second, Greek yogurt contains casein and whey protein, both of which help preserve lean muscle mass. After 60, muscle loss accelerates, and as you lose muscle, your resting metabolism slows, making fat storage even easier. Protecting muscle is protecting your metabolism. Now add walnuts. Walnuts are one of the richest plant-based sources of omega-3 fatty acids, specifically ALA. Multiple studies have linked regular walnut consumption with reductions in visceral fat and inflammatory markers, including CRP and interleukin-6. They also contain melatonin, which supports sleep quality, and poor sleep is one of the most underappreciated drivers of visceral fat accumulation in people over 60. The dose: 1 cup of plain Greek yogurt topped with a small handful, about 14 walnut halves. Eat it as a mid-morning or mid-afternoon snack. One note for seniors: if you're lactose sensitive, Greek yogurt is typically well tolerated because the straining process removes most lactose. But if you have any concerns, consult your doctor. Simple, inexpensive, underestimated. Hard-boiled eggs are one of the most efficient anti-visceral fat snacks available to people over 60. And the reason comes down to one nutrient most people have never heard of: choline. Choline is a nutrient found almost exclusively in egg yolks, and it plays a direct, documented role in liver fat metabolism. Your liver is the primary organ responsible for processing and exporting fat from your body. When choline levels are insufficient, which is common in older adults, the liver loses efficiency at moving fat out, and visceral fat can accumulate as a result. A large egg contains about 147 milligrams of choline. The daily recommended intake for adults over 50 is 425 milligrams for women and 550 milligrams for men. 2 hard-boiled eggs gets you more than halfway there. Beyond choline, eggs deliver high-quality complete protein, all 9 essential amino acids, which, as we discussed, helps regulate cortisol and protect muscle mass. And here's something important. The cholesterol fear around eggs is largely outdated. The American Heart Association now recognizes that for most healthy adults, dietary cholesterol from eggs has a minimal impact on blood cholesterol levels. The bigger driver of problematic cholesterol is saturated fat and trans fat, not eggs. The dose: 1 to 2 hard-boiled eggs as a snack. Season with a pinch of paprika or everything bagel seasoning to keep it enjoyable. Prepare a batch of 6 on Sunday. They keep in the refrigerator for up to a week. This one has become well known in health circles, but most people aren't clear on why it works so specifically for visceral fat, or why the vehicle matters. Avocado is rich in monounsaturated fatty acids, MUFAs, and MUFAs have a documented, specific effect on visceral fat. A study published in Diabetes Care found that a diet rich in monounsaturated fat was associated with a significantly lower accumulation of abdominal fat compared to a diet higher in saturated fat, even when total calorie intake was the same. The mechanism? MUFAs improve insulin sensitivity. When your cells respond better to insulin, your blood sugar stabilizes and your body has far less reason to convert excess glucose into visceral fat. Avocados also contain nearly 10 grams of fiber per half fruit, and fiber is one of the most potent tools we have against visceral fat. Fiber slows glucose absorption, feeds beneficial gut bacteria, and directly reduces the inflammatory markers associated with visceral fat. Now, Why rye crisp bread specifically and not regular crackers or toast? Rye has a significantly lower glycemic index than wheat. Most crackers and white bread cause a sharp insulin spike. Rye crisp bread, brands like Wassa or Fin Crisp, causes a much more gradual glucose rise. That matters enormously for insulin-resistant adults over 60. The dose. 2 rye crisp breads topped with half an avocado, mashed, with a squeeze of lemon and a pinch of sea salt. This snack is also high in potassium, which supports blood pressure, a bonus for most people in this age group. I told you number 4 would surprise you. Here it is. Tart cherry and chia seed pudding. I know, it sounds like something from a wellness blog, but hear me out, because the science here is genuinely compelling for people over 60. Tart cherries, specifically Montmorency tart cherries, are one of the richest known food sources of anthocyanins. Anthocyanins are plant pigments with powerful anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties. And here's what's directly relevant to visceral fat. A 2019 study in the Journal of Nutritional Biochemistry found that anthocyanin supplementation in older adults was associated with a significant reduction in visceral fat area on imaging, independent of calorie intake. The mechanism appears to involve adiponectin, a hormone that regulates fat storage and glucose metabolism. Anthocyanins appear to upregulate adiponectin, which directly signals the body to reduce visceral fat storage. Chia seeds bring a separate superpower. They are one of the most fiber-dense foods on Earth, about 10 grams of fiber per ounce, and they form a thick gel when soaked in liquid. That gel slows gastric emptying dramatically, which means blood sugar rises slowly and stays stable for hours. For insulin-resistant adults, that's significant. How to make it. The night before, mix 3 tablespoons of chia seeds into 3/4 cup of unsweetened almond or oat milk. Add 2 tablespoons of tart cherry juice, not sweetened cherry juice, specifically tart cherry juice, available at most grocery stores or online. Stir well, refrigerate overnight. In the morning, top with a few fresh or frozen tart cherries if available. It takes 2 minutes to prepare, and it's genuinely one of the most powerful anti-visceral fat snacks I recommend to patients in their 60s and 70s. This one is about a powerful combination that does 2 things simultaneously. It gives your body almost no net glucose to work with while delivering healthy fats that support fat metabolism. Celery is sometimes called a negative calorie food, and while that's not entirely accurate scientifically, it's directionally right. Celery is roughly 95% water, extremely low in calories, and contains apigenin, a natural compound that has been shown in research to have anti-inflammatory and anti-obesity effects. More practically, celery provides crunch, volume, and a sense of fullness, all of which help prevent overeating at your next meal. That matters for visceral fat because meal size control is one of the most effective levers available to older adults trying to reduce abdominal fat. Almond butter adds the critical component, healthy fat and protein together. Unlike peanut butter, almond butter is higher in vitamin E and magnesium. Magnesium deserves a special mention here. Deficiency in magnesium, which is extremely common in adults over 60, has been directly linked to higher cortisol levels and greater visceral fat accumulation. Almond butter is one of the most bioavailable food sources of magnesium available. The dose: 3 to 4 stalks of celery with 1.5 tablespoons of natural, no added sugar almond butter. Read the label. The only ingredients should be almonds and possibly salt. Let me be direct. Cottage cheese is probably the most underrated high-protein snack in America, and after 60, it may be one of your most important allies. Cottage cheese is rich in casein protein, a slow-digesting protein that creates a sustained release of amino acids over several hours. This is critical for two reasons. First, casein suppresses appetite more effectively than fast-digesting proteins over a longer time window, meaning you're less likely to snack impulsively before dinner. Second, and more importantly for people over 60, casein protein actively prevents muscle catabolism. Muscle catabolism, the breakdown of muscle for energy, accelerates dramatically after 60, especially between meals and overnight. By providing a slow, steady supply of amino acids, cottage cheese keeps your muscles from being broken down for fuel. More muscle means a faster metabolism. A faster metabolism means less visceral fat accumulation. Now add berries: blueberries, strawberries, raspberries. Berries are among the lowest glycemic fruits available. They contain pterostilbene and resveratrol, compounds that specifically target visceral fat-related inflammation. A landmark study from the University of Michigan found that blueberry consumption was associated with reductions in abdominal fat in overweight subjects, and the researchers attributed this largely to the polyphenol content. The dose: half a cup of low-fat or full-fat cottage cheese. Full fat is fine. The fat helps with satiety and vitamin absorption, topped with a half cup of mixed berries. No added sweetener needed. The berries provide natural sweetness. Here's another surprise pick, particularly for women over 60. Edamame, young green soybeans, contains a class of compounds called isoflavones. And isoflavones have a well-documented relationship with visceral fat in postmenopausal women. After menopause, estrogen levels drop sharply. As I mentioned earlier, estrogen plays a role in regulating fat distribution, keeping it away from the abdomen. When estrogen declines, visceral fat increases. Isoflavones are phytoestrogens, plant compounds that partially mimic estrogen's activity in the body, particularly in fat tissue. Multiple studies, including a 2012 meta-analysis published in Obesity Reviews, found that isoflavone supplementation in postmenopausal women was associated with statistically significant reductions in visceral fat area, without any change in subcutaneous fat. That's a specific and remarkable finding. For men over 60, edamame still delivers. It's an excellent plant-based complete protein, one of only a handful of plant foods that contain all 9 essential amino acids, and it's high in fiber, which blunts insulin response. The dose: 1 cup of edamame in shells, about half a cup of shelled beans. Steam or microwave from frozen, add a pinch of sea salt. It takes 3 minutes. You can buy frozen edamame at virtually any supermarket for under $3. And I saved the best news for last: dark chocolate, specifically 85% cacao or higher, paired with a small handful of almonds. I know, it sounds almost too good to be true, but the research here is robust, and I prescribe this combination to patients with complete clinical confidence. Dark chocolate at 85% or higher contains 2 critically important compounds for visceral fat. The first is flavonoids, particularly epicatechin. Flavonoids in dark chocolate have been shown to directly reduce cortisol levels. A study published in the Journal of Proteome Research found that consuming about 1.4 ounces of dark chocolate daily for 2 weeks measurably reduced urinary cortisol metabolites in stressed adults. Remember, cortisol drives visceral fat storage. Anything that sustainably lowers cortisol is working against belly fat accumulation. The second is magnesium. Dark chocolate is one of the richest dietary sources of magnesium. A 1-ounce serving of 85% dark chocolate delivers about 65 milligrams. As I mentioned with almond butter, magnesium deficiency is prevalent in people over 60 and is directly associated with elevated cortisol and greater visceral fat. The almonds in this pairing add additional magnesium, plus vitamin E and monounsaturated fat that further supports insulin sensitivity. The dose: about 1 ounce of dark chocolate, roughly 3 to 4 squares, with 10 to 12 almonds. This snack is best in the early afternoon, not after dinner, as it still contains a modest amount of natural sugar and some caffeine from the cacao. One critical warning: not all dark chocolate is equal. Look for 85% cacao or higher, minimal added ingredients, and no partially hydrogenated oils. Read the label. A good bar should list cacao mass, cocoa butter, and a small amount of sugar, nothing else. Now I need to spend a few minutes on the flip side, because there are 3 snacks that are marketed as healthy that people over 60 consume constantly and that are very likely making your visceral fat situation worse. Number 1. Flavored instant oatmeal packets. This one catches people off guard because oatmeal has a genuinely healthy reputation, and plain oats deserve it. But those convenient flavored packets, maple brown sugar, peaches and cream, apple cinnamon, are loaded with added sugar. Many contain 12 to 14 grams of sugar per packet. That's nearly 3 teaspoons. For an insulin-resistant adult over 60, that single packet can trigger a significant blood sugar spike that feeds visceral fat storage directly. If you love oatmeal, eat it, but buy plain rolled oats and flavor it yourself with cinnamon, a small handful of berries, and a tablespoon of almond butter. That combination does the opposite. Number 2. Rice cakes. Rice cakes are perhaps the most misunderstood diet food in America. They're low in calories, yes, but plain rice cakes have a glycemic index of 82, which is higher than white bread. They are essentially pure starch with almost no protein, no fiber, and no fat to buffer the glucose spike. For anyone with insulin resistance, which is most adults over 60, rice cakes are a visceral fat delivery mechanism disguised as a diet food. Number 3. Low-fat fruit yogurt. This is the one that frustrates me most, because food manufacturers have known for decades what happens when you remove fat from yogurt. It tastes terrible. So they replace the fat with sugar. A typical 6-ounce container of low-fat fruit yogurt can contain 20 to 26 grams of sugar. That's more sugar than a glazed donut. And unlike fat, which does not spike insulin, that sugar hits your bloodstream fast and hard. Switch to plain Greek yogurt and add your own fruit. It's that simple. The theme across all 3 of these? They spike insulin. After 60, insulin management is the single most important dietary factor in controlling visceral fat. Any snack that sends your blood sugar spiking, regardless of how healthy it looks on the label, is working against you. All right, you now have 8 powerful tools. Let me show you how to use them. First, timing. The most effective snack window for controlling visceral fat in people over 60 is 2 to 4 hours after your main meal. If you have lunch at noon, your snack window is roughly 2 to 3 p.m. This matters because insulin sensitivity is at its most vulnerable in the late afternoon and evening. Eating a well-constructed snack in the mid-afternoon actually stabilizes blood sugar going into dinner, which means you'll eat less at dinner, have a smaller insulin response to your evening meal, and be less likely to store visceral fat overnight. What I strongly recommend against? Snacking after 8 p.m. Your body's metabolic rate slows significantly in the hours before sleep. Insulin clearance is slower at night, and late-night snacking, even healthy snacking, has been associated with greater visceral fat accumulation in multiple studies. Second, the PFF rule. Every snack you choose should contain some combination of protein, fiber, and fat, ideally all three. This combination is what keeps blood sugar stable, cortisol in check, and your body in fat burning rather than fat storing mode. Look at our 8 snacks. Every single one hits at least 2 of those 3 pillars. Most hit all 3. Third, start with 3. Don't try to overhaul everything at once. In week 1, pick 3 snacks from this list and rotate through them. Once those feel natural and habitual, add a 4th. The goal is sustainability, because a snack plan you follow for 6 months will always beat a perfect plan you follow for 6 days. 4th, hydration. This sounds basic, but I have to say it because it's extremely common in my patients over 60. Many people confuse thirst for hunger. The thirst sensation weakens with age. It's a documented physiological change. If you find yourself wanting to snack outside of your normal window, drink 8 to 12 ounces of water first and wait 10 minutes. Frequently, the craving disappears entirely. If it doesn't, have your snack. A simple daily structure might look like this. Morning snack, optional if 4+ hours before lunch. Greek yogurt with walnuts. Afternoon snack, 2 to 3 p.m. Avocado on rye crisp bread, or dark chocolate with almonds. Evening, if needed, before 7 p.m. only. Cottage cheese with berries. That's a realistic, sustainable framework, and it covers protein, fiber, healthy fat, anti-inflammatory compounds, and cortisol regulation in a single day. Let me bring it home. Here are your 8 snacks. 1. Greek yogurt with walnuts. Protein and omega-3s that lower cortisol. 2. Hard-boiled eggs. Choline for liver fat metabolism. 3. Avocado on rye crisp bread. Muffas and fiber that improve insulin sensitivity. 4. Tart cherry and chia pudding. Anthocyanins that directly reduce visceral fat area. 5. Celery with almond butter. Volume, magnesium, and appetite control. 6. Cottage cheese with berries. Casein protein and polyphenols. 7. Edamame. Isoflavones for postmenopausal visceral fat reduction. 8. Dark chocolate with almonds. Flavonoids and magnesium that lower cortisol. Now, I want to be honest with you. No snack is magic. No single food is going to undo the hormonal changes that come with aging. But what is true, what the research consistently shows, is that the right food choices compound over time. Every insulin spike you avoid is visceral fat your body doesn't store. Every cortisol-lowering meal is abdominal fat your body slowly releases. After 60, every food choice you make is either working for you or against you. The 8 snacks I've shared today work for you. Start with 1 this week, just 1, and build from there. If you found this video helpful, please take a second to hit that thumbs up. It genuinely helps this information reach more people who need it. I'm Dr. Leonid Kim. Take good care of yourself because you've earned it.